we hear the president and Pete Hegseth speak of destruction. There's been a lot of physical destruction, but there's been almost zero destruction of meaningful strategic capabilities of Iran. Iran always went into this conflict knowing that its ballistic missile and drone capabilities would serve as the foundation of their military response. So for Pete Hegseth and the president to redefine this war as based upon Iran's naval prowess, as if the Iranian Navy ever, positioned or postured itself to be a competitor of the United States Navy, or as an air power. No, Iran never said that it was either of those. What Iran said, and I was told by the Iranian president in person, together with the foreign minister last September, that Iran's strategic deterrence comes from their conventional ballistic missile capabilities, that this is, how they postured themselves, and this is how they would hopefully deter somebody from attacking them. But if somebody attacked, to punish the attackers. Deterrence doesn't work unless people know and understand that there will be a consequence for your actions. There are many people who believe that the Iranian missile and drone capabilities were overhyped, that Iran lacked the political will to follow through. Not anymore. Now we know that Iran has the ability, the wherewithal to employ these weapons, employ them effectively. They hammered the United States military installations in the region. They punished the state of Israel, and they sent a clear signal to the Gulf Arab states that the totality of their infrastructure is at risk should they continue to support the United States in this illegal war of aggression. So Iran holds literally all the cards. They have not been defeated at all, not even close. They're getting in fact, they were getting stronger as the war went on because their underground missile factories started kicking in. And, not only were they launching missiles, they were producing missiles. It's underground missile production capability that's immune to anything the United States does overhead. Here we have the president threatening the potential resumption of military force. I, again, want to point the following facts out. There's nothing left to bomb. Everything's underground and we can't destroy that. Anything that's above ground has zero military value. If it was of military value, we would have struck it already. So we will simply be bombing buildings, probably buildings affiliated with civilians. But no matter what, if you think at this juncture, more than 40 days into this conflict, that Iran has left anything of value in a building inside their nation, I have a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you. There's nothing in Iran to bomb. So they would like to see the sanctions lifted. They would like to see their economy function smoothly. But they're willing to see this to the bitter end. They believe in what they're doing. They the people of Iran were actually quite angry when the ceasefire happened and the negotiating team went to Islamabad. They were in the streets saying, no peace with America, no peace with Israel. And again, some people say, well, wow, that's pretty harsh. They're very violent people. No, they didn't start this war. We attacked them in an event that makes Pearl Harbor pale in comparison. We assassinated their supreme leader. And in the process, we carried out attacks that included a school where we killed 175 innocent civilians. 160 odd of them were innocent girls between the age of 6 and 12. This is what we did, and this is what we're doing. This president is, I have trouble coming up with words that I can say in civil company. But this president.
Let me ask you something, Scott, on that point you just raised up here, because I wonder if you can draw some analogies maybe to help our audience understand the impact of this. You mentioned that issue with the schoolgirls getting killed. When the negotiating team flew to Islamabad, they had some artifacts from that time. They had some photographs and some backpacks and shoes and other stuff on board one of the aircraft that were going on there. How important is this? Is this something like there used to be in the U.S., the remember the Alamo and all that? There's something, this rallying cry. Is anything similar to that going on with the Iranian side?
Oh, this has become one of the defining moments of this conflict. The murder, the assassination of Ali Khamenei is one. The supreme leader who was at home. It doesn't take an intelligence, specialist to track him down. He was at home with his 14-month-old granddaughter when he was murdered. in a surprise attack, an act of perfidy. That same morning, a cruise missile struck a school in Manab, in Iran along the southern coast. That the missile that struck, didn't kill everybody, but it caused some damage. The principal and the surviving teachers rallied the surviving children, and brought them in and took them to the safest place they knew. You know how when you have a tornado in the Midwest, there's the basement, or there's someplace, the gymnasium, that's deemed to be a safe place. This was the prayer hall. It was the most strongly built portion of the building. They brought the surviving children in and huddled them in while their parents were being called to come and get them. We had another cruise missile flying overhead. These are advanced Block 4 cruise missiles that have retargeting capability. On board, they have a camera that's capturing imagery and broadcasting the imagery back to the command center on the ship, in this case, the USS Vincennes. No, I'm sorry, not the Vincennes. The Vincennes is the one that shot down an airplane and killed 290 people. I'll get the name of the ship in a minute. But the guys on the ship were looking at these images, and they saw, humans clustering in. The imagery is of enough resolution that they could see the painted flowers and the painted playgrounds on the ground. So they knew this was a school. And yet, as the people congregated in, that missile was sent out, redirected, and reattacked, and killed everybody in that building. All the women, the principal died holding children in her arms. Teachers were killed shielding their students from the harm brought by the United States. This was a deliberate act of murder, and the Iranians have identified the commanding officer and the executive officer of the ship involved, and they're calling them out as war criminals, saying these are the guys responsible for murder. This is a big deal. This is a huge deal. This is remember the Alamo. This is, any rallying cry you have. And these are the most innocent. When you go and look at the stories, the Iranians aren't playing propaganda here. There's a lot of Americans, and they disgust me, but every one of those girls there had a backstory. Every one of the children killed there. These were kids with a life. And Iran is a modern nation state. This is not, we hear these people talking about these savages. The president of the United States calls them savages. These girls had more culture and more education than the president would ever have. They have more in their pinky. These are girls who are training to be gymnasts, training to be doctors. They had visions of being lawyers to help their families. One of the girls was in a contest where she would memorize passages from the Quran, and she was 2 weeks away from going to Tehran, the capital city, to enter into a major competition where if she won, it would get her on a pathway where she could be a journalist and do broadcast television. These are the people we killed. We, America, killed them. Our weapons, directed by our officers, taking orders from our leadership. And the Iranians have made this a rallying cry. It disgusts them. It enrages them. And yet they sit there and they have they're just poo-pooed by American negotiators who, frankly speaking, J.D. Vance wasn't there to negotiate a successful outcome. J.D. Vance was there to prolong a deliberate attempt by the United States to reframe what was going on as Iranian desperation. The Iranians weren't desperate. They came very well prepared to have an agreement. They had done their research. They had experts. They had the research papers. They had the facts. They had everything. We came with Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff and J.D. Vance and nothing. Yeah, 300 people showed up with nothing, zero. We didn't come in and say, here's our position. Here's what we want. This is how we think. They said, hey, we'll see what you got. No, we reject it, and they walked away. Why? Why are we doing this? I think it's a game being played by the president because, remember, let me make this point too. If we're evaluating what's going on right now from a geopolitical perspective, from a military analytical perspective, from an economic perspective, you're doing it all wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, the only perspective that matters when talking about this conflict is the perspective of Donald Trump's ego. That's all this is about. This is about Donald Trump very concerned that his brand, his legacy is being tarnished, perhaps irreparably and fatally if he can't survive the midterm elections. That's the end of his political legacy. And for a narcissist like Trump to see everything he has built collapse like this and failure is unacceptable. So he needs to deflect responsibility for the failure, his failure in this conflict, onto the shoulders of others. And I think J.D. Vance was thrown out there as a sacrificial lamb. J.D. Vance led the initial team with Witkoff and Kushner. And when the story's finally written, it's going to be Vance was unable to close the deal. Donald Trump, was able to come in and get a deal. I don't think we're going to go on to a next phase of bombing. I could be wrong. I mean, of course, anything can happen. It's a very dangerous situation right now. And as I said, a blockade is an act of war. But the military knows that. What are we going to do? Bomb what? What targets do you want bombed? Because from now on, it becomes a literal, without any debate, war crime, because we'll be bombing civilians. Collective punishment, what we're doing. That is a war crime. There's no legitimate military activity to attack. And we can't do it. We're out of weapons, out of precision strike weapons. We're out of ballistic missile defense. So the same situation, the deficiencies and failures that led us to seek a ceasefire are not going to be cured. Iran is stronger. Iran is better. We'll just repeat this scenario. So I don't believe we're going to move into the next phase. I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of political jockeying as Donald Trump seeks desperately to find the perfect sequence of events that allows him to slip in, be the one to negotiate a deal and declare victory and say, I'm the man that did it.
He may have that intention, but evidence is starting to accrue that there has been some pretty profound miscalculations up to this point, which does not give any optimism for how this is going to get resolved anytime near term. And I'd like your view on this. So I think that it's pretty clear now that the initial going in process is that there was this belief among President Trump, which was fed to him by both Israeli and American officials on the inside, that this is going to be something quick. It's going to be like Venezuela. Instead of snatching Maduro, we're going to assassinate Ali Khamenei, and then the other people will be more reasonable, and then they'll talk and they'll give us what we want. We'll take their oil. 2 thumbs up. It's a big victory. That didn't happen. Now all of a sudden there's, oh snap, what do we do now? And then they had to figure out a war plan on the fly. Clearly was not resourced. And they bring another aircraft carrier in. They bring some troops in later. It's just totally disjointed. It appears that there's some evidence that in this negotiation here, he may have meant what you suggested there. He also may have had some idea that because I'm threatening that I'm going to get a submission into what we want here, but now that has failed. And in this soundbite we just showed you, they asked President Trump, what's the play now? Do you think that they're going to come back and you use this as leverage? And you can see in his mind, he's like, sure. Yeah, that sounds good. I read that as, I have no idea what we're going to do next. I guess we got to figure it out on the fly. Do you see any possibility that President Trump literally has no idea what to do next?
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that he has no idea what to do next, that everything that's going on right now is to buy time. As he desperately looks for something. This is why I've always said that I think it's the Russians will save the day, because I think the Russians and the Chinese, have a clear vision of what needs to be done to bring an end to this conflict, but also how to balance the needs, wants, and desires of all parties involved, so that you get an equitable outcome. And for Iran, the equitable outcome would be, being allowed to continue to enrich, not to a nuclear bomb, but enrich for a peaceful nuclear program. That is their lawful right. And also the Strait of Hormuz. Iran, may not. The way this could be negotiated is that Iran doesn't get permanent control of the Strait of Hormuz, but because this war was thrust upon them by the United States, Israel, and the Gulf Arab states, that Iran has an inherent right now to seize control and, put out a toll to raise money that could be used for reconstruction. I think this is a legitimate thing. It doesn't violate international law if there's an agreement in writing that Iran will, take tolls. And this resolves the issue of the United States having to write a big check for reparations, which is something the Iranians are demanding. For Trump, here's a chance for him to, say he's a peacemaker. I mean, he's already said, I've reset the region like nobody's ever done before. So he can make the argument that this was all necessary for a regional reset, that there was no chance for peace, using the old framework that a war was necessary to shake things up so that you could now come together with a new way of doing business together. China has shown tremendous political acumen. Remember, they're the ones that brought the Iranians and the Saudis together in a rapprochement. The Russians have very good relations with all the parties involved, including the United States, ironically. So I do think that there's a chance for Russia and China to step in and help shape the events. The idea of the United States and Iran successfully carrying out bilateral negotiations, even if moderated by Pakistan, isn't going to happen because it would be too much about, the United States would have to actually posture in a way that leaves no doubt that they lost this war. And that's politically unacceptable to this president. So there's going to have to be some gamesmanship played where, the substance of the outcome is in favor of Iran, but the perception can be balanced so that Donald Trump can declare victory and walk away, because otherwise there's no incentive for him to walk away. He'll cross line, and then Donald Trump went kill it, boom, 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 hardline position, da da da. Netanyahu calls, da 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 da. End of negotiations. And now Donald Trump, at the appropriate time, is going to slide in, and he's going to get all the glory. He's going to be the one that closes the deal. But in the meantime, he has to posture. Remember, he has to be able to make the case to ignorant Americans who don't know all of the subtleties here that it was his pressure that created the possibility for a deal. See, that was the problem, that they were going to get a deal too easy. And therefore it looked like an American surrender. Can't have that. And so you have to get it up to the finish line, stop, pull J.D. Vance, blame the Iranians, intransigent, blockade, threats, boom, 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 slide back in, close the deal, and say it was only because of our threats that the Iranians finally came across the finish line.
Now that is fascinating because I can definitely see that happen. The fly in that ointment, though, is will the Iranians play ball with that? Because I as you said at the beginning, they don't need a deal here. They want a deal. They don't need one. And they're certainly not going to just like backtrack and say, all right, we'll give you everything you want so that you can come out looking good. Or do you think that they would? Would the Iranians be willing to let him get public credit if it gets the terms that they need and ends the war?
I don't think Iran cares about domestic American politics. So Donald Trump can sell this any way he wants to the American people. I don't think the Iranians are in a PR game with the United States. The Iranians want very basic things. One, they will continue to enrich uranium. How that's defined, I would imagine, would be similar to the deal that was almost reached before we attacked Iran on February 28th. So we already have a solution to that. That's what the audience needs to understand. This problem's already been solved to the satisfaction of the United States and Israel, closing all possibilities for Iran to develop a nuclear weapon, and yet Iran gets to retain its enrichment capability, which is all they want. The pride of saying, we get to do this. And so that's already resolved. It's just a matter of the president coming in. And here's the president. He can spin it and say, I was able to get the deal that Barack Obama couldn't. Barack Obama could only get the JCPOA, which had sunset clauses, and at the end, massive enrichment to as much material as he wanted, out of control. Here, he'll be able to say, no, we permanently shut the door on a pathway to nuclear weapons. This is the best deal. I gave you this deal, a better deal. I told you I would get a better deal than Barack Obama. So there he spent it. The Iranians don't care what he says to the American people. They could care less. What they care about is the end result, continued enrichment. It's the same thing with the Strait of Hormuz. There's a deal to be made there. Whether it's some sort of revenue sharing, some sort of consortium of collecting revenues that are passed out, that allows Iran to retain the physical control of the Strait of Hormuz, but with to be sold in a different way, where the United States gets to say the favorite Donald Trump thing: I'm making you money. I'm getting revenue from the Strait of Hormuz. America's there. We're seeing everything. We're controlling everything. We're America. And the mouth breathers back in America go, wow, he's the greatest. This is 5D chess. He's awesome. When all it is the Iranians going, give the guy a nickel, make him go away. That's a deal that's there. Missiles, we're not going to touch the missiles. The Iranians are never going to give up the missiles because that's their deterrence. And frankly, we're just going to suck that one up. And that's it. There's the deal right there. It can be made right now, and Donald Trump gets to sell it anyway. When it comes to forces leaving the Middle East, Iran doesn't get to dictate that outcome. However, it's an outcome that's going to happen no matter what. And so Donald Trump gets to say, I reset the region. We now have peace and stability. I can pull the boys home. We don't need to keep them here anymore. See, he makes it look like he did a good thing, when in fact he got his butt kicked and he's retreating. For the Iranians, people say, well, what's in it for Iran? Imagine for the first time in 5 decades being able to get total control of your economy and sell the oil and gas that you produce on the market at fair market value. And the money comes in without restrictions, that you're able to work with the global finance system to get investments coming in, get China coming in without fear of secondary sanctions, getting the Russians coming in without fear of secondary sanctions. And for the Iranian government, for the first time, to deliver on the promise of prosperity to the Iranian people. People say, well, what's in it for Iran? That's it. The better future. This is it. This is the better future that has eluded Iran for 5 decades. It's available now. Iran can join BRICS without restrictions. Iran can become involved in the European Economic Union, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, all without restrictions, able to maximize their economic potential. And Iran will become one of the most, prosperous nations in the region. And that's what's there for the Iranian people. But they're not going to sell their soul to get to that objective.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say, because there are some big headwinds against that inside of Iran, because there are we've heard from some experts here just recently that there was a lot of I guess, I don't know if conservative is the right term, but those who are against any of this working with us, because they said we can't trust them at all. They backstabbed us so many times and done all this stuff. So you can't, even if they agree to this stuff, you can't agree to it. We need to try to have a military solution. But so far, I think they call them the reformers, the element, the Ghalibaf and the Pezeshkian, they have been able to run roughshod because they want that outcome. But like there are headwinds for the Iranian side, there's headwinds for the American side. And for all that stuff you talked about that Trump may be working in his mind to try to get done to somehow twist things around, and no matter how many people got killed, to make him look good. That may be his intent, but there's headwinds here too. Let me just show you a couple here. Here's Mike Pompeo seeming to want to do anything besides have a negotiated settlement. He wants a military victory over Iran.